September 16th, 1992, the British government just lost $3.3 billion in a single day. One man made $1 billion, his name, George Soros. And he accomplished it by betting against an entire country's currency. This is the story of how a hedge fund manager broke the Bank of England and changed financial history forever. To understand how Soros pulled off this legendary trade, we need to understand what he was actually betting against. It wasn't just the British pound, it was an entire flawed system called the exchange rate mechanism, or ERM. This was Europe's attempt in the early 1990s to stabilize currencies before eventually creating the euro. The idea seemed logical on paper. European countries would agree to keep their currencies within specific exchange rate bands against each other. If your currency got too strong or too weak, your central bank would intervene by buying or selling currency to maintain the agreed range. Britain joined this system in October 1990, pegging the pound to the German Deutschmark at a rate that seemed sustainable at the time. But there was a fundamental problem that Soros recognized immediately. Britain's economy was struggling, unemployment was rising, manufacturing was declining, housing prices were collapsing. Meanwhile, Germany's economy was booming after reunification. Germany was raising interest rates to control inflation from massive spending on integrating East Germany. This created impossible tension. To stay in the ERM, Britain needed to match Germany's high interest rates to keep the pound strong. But high interest rates were destroying Britain's already weak economy. The government faced an impossible choice: defend the currency and worsen the recession, or abandon the ERM and face humiliation. Soros saw this trap clearly and realized the government would eventually have to choose the economy over the currency peg. So what did Soros actually do? Throughout 1992, his quantum fund began building a massive short position against the British pound. Shorting currency means borrowing pounds, immediately selling them for other currencies like dollars or Deutschmarks, then hoping to buy them back cheaper later to repay the loan and pocket the difference. But Soros wasn't working alone. He coordinated with other hedge funds and traders who saw the same opportunity. Together, they were preparing to attack the pound with overwhelming force. By September, Soros had accumulated a short position worth approximately $10 billion. That's an absolutely massive bet that required enormous conviction and nerve. If he was wrong, his fund would be destroyed. The attack began in earnest during the week of September 7th. Currency traders worldwide started dumping pounds, betting the Bank of England couldn't defend the currency. Forever? The British government fought back desperately. The Bank of England spent billions buying pounds to support the price. Chancellor Norman Lamont raised interest rates from 10% to 12% in a single day, then announced they'd go to 15%, trying to make holding pounds attractive enough to stop the selling pressure. Nothing worked. The selling pressure was too intense. For every pound the Bank of England bought, 10 more were being sold by speculators. Britain was burning through foreign currency reserves at an unsustainable rate, spending billions defending an indefensible position. Wednesday, September 16th, became known as Black Wednesday. By afternoon, the British government admitted defeat. They announced Britain would exit the ERM and allow the pound to float freely. The moment that announcement hit, the pound crashed immediately, falling 15% against the Deutschmark. Soros had won. His fund made over $1 billion in profit in essentially 24 hours. Other traders and hedge funds made billions more collectively. The British government and taxpayers lost approximately £3.3 billion trying to defend the currency. One of the most powerful central banks in the world had been beaten by market forces and speculative traders. But here's what makes this story so controversial and complex. Was Soros a villain who attacked Britain for personal profit, or was he simply recognizing an inevitable economic reality? Some British politicians and media portrayed him as a greedy speculator who hurt ordinary British citizens. The Daily Mail called him the man who broke Britain. Politicians blamed speculators for forcing the crisis, but others, including many economists, argue Soros actually did Britain a favor. The exchange rate mechanism was strangling the British economy. Staying in the system meant higher unemployment, business failures, and prolonged recession. By forcing Britain out, Soros and other speculators ended an unsustainable policy that was causing real economic damage. After exiting the exchange rate mechanism, Britain lowered interest rates and the economy began recovering. Within months, unemployment started falling and growth returned. This raises profound questions about currency markets and government policy. Can governments successfully fight market forces when their policies are fundamentally flawed? History suggests Turkey, Argentina, Thailand, and many others have tried defending currency pegs against market pressure and failed repeatedly. The markets have more money and patience than any single government. Soros understood this principle deeply. He wasn't attacking Britain out of malice. He was recognizing that Britain's ERM membership was economically unsustainable and betting on the inevitable outcome. When you see a government policy that contradicts economic fundamentals, you can either ignore it or profit from the eventual correction. The mechanics of how Soros made his $1 billion are actually straightforward. He borrowed approximately $10 billion worth of pounds when they were trading at about 2.8 Deutschmarks per pound. He immediately sold those pounds for Deutschmarks. When Britain exited the ERM, the pound fell to approximately 2.4 Deutschmarks. Soros bought back the pounds he needed to repay his loan at this lower price. The difference between his selling price and buying price, multiplied across $10 billion of currency, generated roughly $1 billion in profit. Simple arbitrage, just executed at an absolutely massive scale that required tremendous conviction and risk tolerance. What's remarkable is the timing and coordination required. Soros couldn't execute this trade too early, or the government might successfully defend and he'd face massive losses. He couldn't wait too long or miss the opportunity entirely. He needed to build his position quietly without alerting authorities, then strike with overwhelming force when the moment was right. The trade required reading political will, understanding economic fundamentals, analyzing market psychology, and having nerves of steel to bet billions on your analysis being correct. One miscalculation and his entire career would have ended in catastrophic failure. The aftermath changed Soros's life forever. He became simultaneously famous and infamous. Financial professionals studied his trade as a masterclass in macroeconomic speculation. Critics called him a dangerous speculator undermining governments. Conspiracy theories emerged claiming he manipulated markets for political purposes. The British establishment never forgave him, with some politicians claiming he damaged Britain for personal gain. But Soros maintained he simply recognized reality before policymakers admitted it. He later said the trade wasn't personal against Britain. It was recognizing an obvious mispricing in currency markets created by unsustainable government policy. This event fundamentally changed how governments approach currency policy. After Black Wednesday, central banks became more cautious about defending indefensible positions. So, was George Soros a hero or a villain? That depends entirely on perspective. To British politicians who lost their jobs over the crisis, he's a predatory speculator. To economists who believed the ERM was damaging Britain's economy, he's someone who forced necessary policy change. To aspiring traders, he's a legend who made the perfect trade with impeccable timing and execution. To taxpayers, he's the man who profited while they paid the cost. The truth is probably that Soros was simply an extremely skilled trader who recognized opportunity in government policy error and had the courage to bet big on his conviction. The lesson here isn't that speculation is good or evil, it's that markets ultimately enforce reality. Governments can temporarily maintain policies that contradict economic fundamentals, but eventually, market pressure forces correction. The longer governments resist, the more painful the eventual adjustment becomes. Soros didn't create Britain's economic problems or force them into the exchange rate mechanism. He simply recognized the situation was unsustainable and positioned himself to profit when reality inevitably asserted itself. If this story fascinated you, drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Soros was right to make this trade? Subscribe for more stories about the most legendary trades in financial history.